go ahead and bring in Eric Franchy. He's the public relations manager at the Cranbrook House and Gardens. Eric, you have one of the most beautiful backdrops we've seen in a while. How are you on this Friday?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
We're great. So, for those that don't understand that this is right here in Metro Detroit, give us the backdrop on the House and Gardens.
Sure. So Cranbrook House and Gardens was the former estate of the Cranbrook Educational Community's founders, George Go Booth and Ellen Scripps Booth. The Booths purchased the Cranbrook property back in 1904. At that time, it was just a rundown 174-acre farm here in rural Bloomfield Hills. And over the course of the next about 4 decades, they would oversee the planting of about 100,000 trees, the implementation of our gardens, reflecting pools, a Greek theater, the development of our educational art and science institutions, and ultimately built up Cranbrook into the 319-acre National Historic Landmark campus that we have here today. So for Cranbrook House, they turned to Detroit architect Albert Kahn, who would design for them an English Tudor arts and crafts style estate, and the Booths would furnish their home with the finest decorative and fine arts through the leading artists and studios of the time. And today, Cranbrook House is actually the oldest surviving manor home in the Metro Detroit region that's open to the public for touring. And then surrounding Cranbrook House, there's a 40-acre site that we refer to as Cranbrook Gardens. So throughout the gardens, there's extensive plantings, lakes, streams, sculptures, and fountains.
You know, it's so funny. I was reading on the history of Cranbrook House, and back in the day, because they were living in Detroit, this was considered the country way out there in Bloomfield Hills.
Absolutely. It took them actually at the time originally about 2 hours to travel up here from their home in Detroit.
Wow, that's amazing. So, how is it working with tours right now? Are they open to the public? Do you have to make an appointment? How is that working?
Yeah, so we've had to make a lot of transitions. Specifically at Cranbrook House, we weren't unfortunately able to reopen the house this season for touring. Typically, we offer tours June through October, but just as a overabundance of caution, for the safety of our visitors, our volunteers, as well as the staff, our second and third floors of the home are currently used for kind of the educational hub of the administrative staff. So we didn't reopen Cranbrook House this season, but we did open up the gardens over this summer, and reservations are not required to see the gardens, and admission is actually completely free. We have 4 generous sponsors, PNC Bank, All Seasons Independent Living, Fleur Detroit, and Roberts Restaurant Group, who have generously covered the cost of admission. So visitors are welcome to join us every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily to see the gardens here at Cranbrook.
And I want to give you a big congratulations because I know that you were awarded the TripAdvisor's 2020 Traveler's Choice Award. My niece and nephew went to school at Cranbrook, so I'm familiar with the gardens and the area there. It really is a beautiful spot for people to go and visit. And if anything else, just to escape the craziness that's going on in our world right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We were super excited and obviously very honored to receive such recognition. The TripAdvisor Traveler's Choice Award, for those who don't know, it recognizes accommodations, attractions, and other institutions who consistently receive high reviews on TripAdvisor's site and actually are ranked in the top 10% on the site worldwide. So we're very pleased to receive such a recognition, especially as you said during this current time. We're so pleased to see the number of visitors that are coming out and making use of this special space, and it's kind of actually really a goal accomplished, I think, because when the Booths purchased the property back in the early 1900s, like we mentioned, their goal was just to have it as kind of a summer retreat for them, kind of a place to escape their busy city life. The Booths worked in publishing. Ellen Scripps' father was James Scripps, who had started the Detroit Evening News, which would become the Detroit News. And George Booth, when he married into the family, would end up taking over as publisher. So really, it was just a place to escape busy city life. So we're glad that visitors are still doing the same thing and using the property to really enjoy the restorative properties of nature.
Eric Franchy with us. He is the Public Relations Manager at the Cranbrook House and Gardens, joining us today on the Oakland County MegaCast. All throughout the local area, a great way to engage with nature and history, as we often do with our Facebook partner, West Bloomfield Parks, today joining us via Facebook Live for the entirety of the show. And Eric, there's so much variety, both for those that are enjoying exploring history and those who have an interest in plants and in nature and in botany, with a variety of different gardens. The sunken garden, you got the herb garden, you got a Japanese garden, daffodil garden. How much variety is there for people of all different interests to explore something new, or even something that they haven't really had interest in before and maybe can gain some interest in now?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's really really one of the biggest benefits, I think, of the gardens is that they really appeal to everyone. For the gardening enthusiast who's looking to learn more about gardening or maybe find inspiration for their own garden, to just somebody who's interested in exploring the great outdoors. I think there really is something here for everyone. And really, I've been here over 8.5 years myself, and I still discover new things every day. But there's just a broad variety. We have over 20 different types of gardens surrounding Cranbrook House. A couple I'll mention. Behind me, you can see the sunken garden, and this is an area that originally was used as a vegetable garden for the booths. They would use it to feed the family. They lived at Cranbrook House with their 5 children, as well as a lot of the gardeners and other staff that were living and working on the estate. So they had lowered this garden to kind of extend the growing season here in Michigan. But later would transform it into a flower garden, and that's how we use it today. So you can kind of see a little bit behind me maybe that there's these 4 rows in the center. These are planted with annuals. So those are plants that, unlike your perennials, they don't return on their own every year. And the design of these changes every single year. We have our conservatory greenhouse co-chair, Paul Nelson, who's a retired project engineer, that will actually design and kind of blueprint what the design will look like using different color combinations, plant varieties to create these stunning works of botanical art. And then typically this garden is planted every year right after Memorial Day weekend with a team of volunteers. But this particular year, we used over 4,000, a combination of 4,000 white begonia, 3 different varieties of sun patience, and then some Victoria blue salvia to create this really spectacular display. And then this is all kind of framed quite nicely by 2 long beds along the fieldstone walls that are planted in a combination of both perennials and annuals. But for visitors that would like to see the sunken garden this year, I do have to encourage you to plan a visit actually within the next week, because as we're nearing the end of our gardening season here, we will be pulling this particular bed, the annuals, on October 8th. So plan a visit by October 7th. But elsewhere around the gardens, as you mentioned, we do have a Japanese garden, and that's actually one of the oldest such gardens in North America, dating back to about 1915. And it's an area that's currently being revitalized under the direction of Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research, with goals of returning it to its kind of historical roots, but also making it more authentic as a Japanese garden. And one of the areas that I'm really excited to see in the plans, they're working to make the past more accessible.
Okay, Eric, I have to tell you, I have the blackest thumb out of anyone. And I try. I go into every spring with the greatest intentions. I will say I'm super proud this year because our hydrangea plants didn't make it. And I talk to them every single day. But when I go into a garden and I see that beautiful backdrop that you're in front of, and I think, oh, I'm going to do something like that. And then it never turns out. They always die. First, how many staff members do you have assigned to this? It's something for me just to remember, did I water them today? But also, what secrets can you give? Because for people who are doing annuals every year or perennials, are there any programs or I try to go on YouTube and watch these people and how they plant and some secrets so that we could take some of that inspiration and move it into our own backyard Any tips that you could share with us?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say you're not alone. I still often identify plants by their colors. Um, but the incredible thing, though, about Cranbrook Gardens is actually it's, for the most part, all maintained by our volunteers. We have a membership of about 300, and of that, I would say probably around 100 that are active as gardeners. And then there's just 2 seasonal part-time staff that assist those volunteers. But collectively, these volunteers will log over 10,000 hours of service every year working in the gardens,
Wow.
leading tours of Cranbrook House, and helping on special events. But as far as learning more about gardening, one takeaway is always that, you have to find what works for you, what works for your space, whether you're working with annuals or perennials, depending on the type of garden and the amount of sun you get. But to learn a little bit more, we always encourage people to become members, and then they can kind of get involved in our gardens and work hand in hand with our volunteers, a lot of which are actually master gardeners. We do also typically, for the last 3 years in early spring, we've partnered with an advanced master gardener in the area to offer about a 3-hour workshop that will cover a variety of topics from to really help plant your gardens and get started for the growing season, with different workshops and topics that might be helpful, from choosing the right plants for your garden, what tools you might need, and things of that nature. And then one of the other ways we like to help out is during our plant sales. So during those plant sales that we offer, we typically have 2 each year. There's one in our greenhouse in February, and then we offer our largest fundraisers, actually our annual spring plant sale in mid-May. At both of those opportunities, though, we encourage guests to interact with our volunteers and ask questions, and they'll do their best to provide advice so that you can hopefully plant your best garden.
So I need to become a volunteer to become an expert. And I'm wondering, so one of the things, because your garden looks absolutely amazing, which you would expect, but one thing that me and all my neighbors and so many people I've seen on social media are complaining about this year, the deer. I love them. We have a mama and 2 babies that have been visiting our neighborhood, but when they started munching on my hydrangea, I was not too happy with them. And my hostas are all gone, which at least they trimmed them down for the winter months. But any suggestions in that area?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not alone. We have the same problem here at Cranbrook in many of our gardens. Fortunately, with hostas, they're pretty hardy plants, so they do tend to come back. For instance, the garden behind me, this one is a little better suited because we have these large walls, and then there's kind of, you can't see it, but further back, there's a fence that we kind of use to help keep the deer out. There are certain plant types. I'd have to check base with our volunteers, but they can recommend different types of plants that are a little bit more resistant to the deer. They're not ones that the deer look for quite as much. And then we've also ourselves in some of our gardens, not necessarily the ones that you see on a typical visit, but in our holding gardens, we've actually had some of our volunteers have built these frame structures that are kind of fenced in, and that can help keep the deer out as well.
Yeah, we took to actually drilling a hole in a bar of soap. I think it's lever soap, and hanging it. I don't know. We were on YouTube. Quickly though, well, I diverse, but I know I'm not the only one with that problem. And there's nothing worse than watching your plants grow and babying them, and then to see the deer out there just munching away. And they're so cute, though. You don't want to disturb them. But Cranbrook is so much more than just your gardens. The entire campus is beautiful, and you have so much more to offer over there at Cranbrook. For people who have never been there before, what is available for the general public to be able to visit and to explore?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a ton here. So we're part of the Cranbrook educational community. That consists of Cranbrook Academy of Art, that's a graduate degree program. There's Cranbrook Art Museum that's open to the public, that's a contemporary museum. We have Cranbrook Institute of Science that's also open to the public, celebrating natural history here in Michigan. Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research, they manage our Cranbrook archives and also some of our historic homes such as Saarinen House and Frank Lloyd Wright Smith House. And 2 of the spaces, our biggest public offerings are over at the Art Museum and the Institute of Science, and both of those reopened over the summer. The Art Museum, they reopened with new operating hours and days, and including extended hours and free admission on Thursdays. So now every week on Thursdays, visitors are welcome to join us at the Art Museum from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. And they can check out, there's 3 new exhibitions over there. And then also on different days throughout the month, the Art Museum will offer family days where you can come do hands-on art making activities. They're kicking off a new virtual lecture series where you can learn about from some of our artists in residence here on campus and other educators, and a lot of activities like that. Over at the Institute of Science, that's a really cool space as well, great for families. You can check out a full-size T-Rex skeleton that we call Black Beauty. There's mastodon, there's meteorites, you can learn about the Great Lakes, and there's really just all kinds of different things to do. And one of the ways visitors can check out both of those spaces in the near future is on October 17th, when we'll be offering a family day. So that will be an opportunity for families to come out and actually walk outdoors between both of the spaces. There'll be hands-on art making activities, as well as science experiments led by our educators. And that will run from 2 to 5 p.m. October 17th. So I recommend checking that out. And then the following weekend, October 23rd and 24th, over at the Institute of Science, they're actually taking their annual Halloween event virtual for the first time, which is pretty exciting. And that will give families the opportunity to register in advance, and then they can they'll receive activity kits that they can follow along during the event virtually with different like science experiments. I think there'll be an art activity this year too, so we recommend checking that out. Also, I'll mention that for those that are really interested in learning about the architecture here on campus, which is really incredible, all the unique architecture, but 2 historic homes that we currently are offering tours of in person through the Cranbrook Center for Collection and Research. One of them being Frank Lloyd Wright's Smith House, that's actually located about a mile off campus, but it was designed for Frank Lloyd Wright for 2 school teachers around 1950. It's a Usonian home, which was designed to kind of, it was Frank Lloyd Wright's way of bringing affordable housing to the middle class. And it's really an interesting story, and kind of inspired to hear about how these 2 school teachers with their modest budgets were actually able to convince Frank Lloyd Wright to design the home of their dreams. Tours of those are offered currently Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays every weekend through the end of November at 1 p.m. And then the center also offers tours of Elio Saarinen's house, which is right here on campus near the Art Museum. And Saarinen was the first he was the head of our architecture department, as well as the first president of Cranbrook Academy of Art. And that's an Art Deco home. Tours of those are offered, again, in person Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 3:30 p.m. every weekend through the end of November. And I do want to mention, too, though, for all of these experiences, whether it's at our historic homes, at the museums, even if it's a free day or activity, registration is required in advance online, just so we can make sure we're adhering to all those health guidelines with capacity limits and other health protocols.
Eric Franchy with us. He is the Public Relations Manager at the Cranbrook House and Gardens, joining us today on the Oakland County MegaCast. Eric, before we let you go, how can people further support your operation at the House and Gardens? Where can people find more information? And is there anything else that you'd like to say today before we let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. A couple things. I'll mention that for those that want to experience Cranbrook, but maybe don't have the opportunity to do so in person, we have a lot of virtual activities. Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research at the start of the current situation kicked off a new Live at 5 series. These are live stream tours that are free to join on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. on the center's Instagram page, and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. on the center's Facebook page. And our curator will actually take you around many different spaces on campus and share a little bit about the architecture, the history, and other stories on about Cranbrook. And then again, those are free to join. If you can't join us live, still head over to our social media channels and you can check out all the archived videos. Those interested in supporting, we do rely heavily on donations, membership dues, and things of that, like all nonprofits in the area and we definitely need assistance during this time. So to support us and to learn more about these offerings that we've been talking about, a lot of the different events, I encourage visitors to head over to www.cranbrook.edu. You can find links to our giving pages, links to each of our institutions, and really learn a lot more about campus. So again, that's cranbrook.edu. And then one other item I'll mention is we do have a free Cranbrook app. So if you just search Cranbrook on the App Store or on Google Play, it's completely free to download. Just I recommend being on a strong Wi-Fi connection, but right at the tip of your fingers, you'll then have access to a lot of self-guided tours. You can keep up to date with the events and activities that we have going on campus. And then there's also a lot of built-in interactive maps. So that's the Cranbrook app, or head to cranbrook.edu.
Eric, thank you so much for your time. You have a beautiful campus there, so we appreciate it, and we hope that people get out and enjoy what all Cranbrook has to offer, because it's so much more than just the school there.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we hope to see you at Cranbrook soon.